the Jews in America, I think they believe that they have a monopoly on suffering. And I just think it's part of their DNA that they feel obligated to vote Democratic. Um, because I think that they buy in whole cloth that the Democratic Party is the party of the people, which, made sense 20, 30, 40 years ago, but it damn sure doesn't make sense now. The Democratic Party now is all for big government. That's all they want.
Mm-hmm.
More government, more regulation, more control.
Let's go.
Welcome to Citizen. We got a special guest returning is Baker Leavitt. I don't even know how to introduce you. You're just some asshole running around talking shit,
I'll take that. I prefer that.
Yeah. It's more difficult to zero in on you if you stay fucking, float like a butterfly, like Muhammad Ali said.
Keep your head moving. Never stop moving your head, man. That's how you win.
So you just got married. Where did you go after? You said you were just talking about it.
So Melissa and I got married on the beach in Ormond Beach, where we live at Sunrise, on August the 1st. My birthday is August the 6th. I chose the 1st because now everything kind of falls into that little week, and I don't have to worry about forgetting shit. But we went we flew up to Boston the next day, drove to Kennebunkport, and we were supposed to stay in Kennebunkport for 2 days and then travel to Bar Harbor, but we were in Kennebunkport a day. We stayed one night, and I was like, we got to get the fuck out of here. It's the land of low T. I would describe Kennebunkport as this little tiny town. There's nothing to do there. It's nice. It's clean. It's a little coastal town. But it was just, you see these women that have, they have director, senior director and above positions at corporations. And they're in charge of the relationship, and these little tiny insignificant men, low T army, just everywhere. And I'm a very talkative person. I like talking to strangers. I thoroughly enjoy it. That's kind of one of the things I do. I'll go talk to anybody. And I just could not wait to get the fuck out of there. So we didn't stay 2 nights. We stayed at the Colony Hotel, which was $700 a night, prepaid. And we left the next morning, and they're like, well, we can't refund you your room. And I was like, no, that's fine. You guys to someone else. I got to get out of here. So we went to Portland, Maine, the next night, which was cool. And then we went to Bar Harbor for a few days and hiked around Acadia National Park. But I've always wondered, who in the hell votes for Kamala? What does a Kamala supporter look like? And now I know. I was surrounded by them.
Yeah. Do you think there's, I always wonder about this. I know the data on both sides, and I know that it's true, but correlation and causation aren't the same. Do you think it's a coincidence that as testosterone levels have dropped, and they have by about 40% over the last 20 years, liberal voters, and the number of them have gone up? So people on the Republican side used to talk about the silent majority. Nixon talked about it. Reagan talked about it. And what he meant was that, yeah, there's a bunch of leftist rabble-rousers out there, but most people are just kind of normal conservatives that want to be left alone and have low taxes and shit, right? And pretty much every president in the 20th century that appealed to that got elected, right? That's a proof of concept. It was true. We know now that it was true. But in the 21st century, as testosterone levels have dropped precipitously, we now see the average, let's call it the total vote, the popular vote in a presidential election. You're looking at somewhere between a 6 and 8 million person difference on the liberal side of things, on the Democratic side. I have to think that there's some correlation there.
So what it is, I think, is that with the low T beta male and the empowerment of women, I think both of those groups have found their balls because of social media. And now they realize that, with more laws and regulation, they're safer. So they can say whatever they want and there's no consequences. So they just run around and I find it hard to believe that there's really anyone with an IQ above room temperature that really is all in on Kamala, like some of these people are saying. It's what do you like about her? Because I think women specifically are more focused on trends than they are policy. Like my cousin Lizzie, she's like one of the top three people at Cargo. We used to argue with her and her friend David Castrini on Facebook.
Hmm.
Remember that? No
Oh
days
yeah.
off in the cockpit.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was always talking shit to everybody.
No, but
Everybody.
Lizzie is a very, very successful individual. And like my conversations with her just the past few days, weeks has been, she's like, oh, I just like her. And I was like, well, what do you like about her? She's like, I just think they're so nice. He's just a nice man. And I was like, yeah, but like, what about the stolen valor stuff? She's like, that's not going to stick. And I was like, what do you mean it's not going to stick? Like that dude has that herring around his neck. That's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Like, because active duty individuals voted 75 to 77%. But for some reason, when guys get out of the military, it drops down to about 33%.
Hmm.
And the one thing, the one unifier, in my opinion, hanging around with you guys and Black Rifle people for the past decade is the one thing that'll unify people is stolen valor, or in some cases, implied valor.
Yeah.
So I think this Tim Waltz guy is a combination of stolen valor because he said shit on camera, and then also there's instances where he has implied valor. He didn't come out and steal valor, but he did imply it. And I think these people they have more social media. They know nothing's going to happen to them, and they're not afraid to speak up and run their mouths and just have contrarian points of view because they see people like us that lift weights and exercise and do masculine stuff like we're genetically wired to do, and they hate it. They absolutely hate it. And maybe it was they weren't in the cool crowds in high school. They didn't play sports. Maybe they felt bullied. I've never bullied anyone in like my entire life that I can recall. Like even when I was in a fraternity or playing sports in high school or in college, like I never bullied anybody.
Hmm.
I've never picked on people. I really have no tolerance for that. But I think it's a byproduct of just social media and them running their little shitty mouths, and they're just gross. Like one thing that was really really alarming to me was and depressing or shocking was we hiked around Acadia National Park for 2 full days, up and down, up and down. Um, and all of the people that I saw there, like all the high school boys, none of them lifted weights, none of them had any, sun on their skin, all vitamin D deficient, just slovenly, miserable, nasty looking bastards.
Hmm.
Like, and the thing that I recall about growing up, man, the only thing I cared about was sports and girls. And I didn't see any. I saw one kid who I talked to that played football, but the rest of them are just low T, slovenly, just nasty. I don't get it, man. I don't understand what happened when it happened. It's kind of shocking to me.
Well, it started around in the late '90s, actually, and for a lot of reasons, hormones in food, microplastics play a big role in it as well. Toxic exposure to stuff, untreated head injuries. There's a confluence of stuff, but the data is this is a 30,000 foot view that you can get more granular on this, but it's essentially that the average 21-year-old today has the same level of testosterone that a 65-year-old had in 2001.
Jesus.
Yes, that is
We need to get
what.
on TRT at an early age.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, like it used to be that your testosterone would start gradually decreasing at a measured rate, unless you had some kind of pituitary disorder, right around the age of 27. Right. Like you would peak, your testosterone would peak, not just in the total and free count, uh, but in your recoverability and stuff at around age 19, right? Your resilience to loss of testosterone and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Your homeostasis, I guess you could call it, because your other hormones are doing pretty well. Gut health, by the way, plays a big role in this stuff too. Most of your hormones are made in your gut. Oxytocin, serotonin, and all that shit are also made in your gut. But anyways, yeah, it is to see effeminate men and masculine women is it should be a warning sign, right? And I wonder, it's hard to tell really because some of these causes are physiological, right? Like it's we're polluting our systems to some degree, so it's hard to tell chicken or egg what like because Marxism has been trying to blur the lines between genders for a very long time, for 150 years or so, right? So it's hard to know if it started with that or if it was just they people that are involved in that shit saw an opportunity once testosterone levels started to go down and seized on it. I think that's probably what it is, because telling women that they can do everything a man can do uh, is it's a cute fucking saying, I guess, but it's not true. It's obviously not true.
No, it's not true at all. I mean, shit, watch the Olympics.
Yeah, yeah. There's a reason that there's two classes of people there, right?
Yeah,
Um,
watch, dude, watch the men's volleyball and women's volleyball.
yeah, men's
You
volleyball is
can't
violent.
you can't follow the ball on a
Yeah,
serve in men's volleyball. It's going so
yeah,
fast.
yeah.
Crazy.
So it's like, that's a cute idea and everything. It's like telling everybody telling their kids you can be president when you grow up. Well, not really. Like, that's most of you aren't qualified to like do anything approaching running for the president of the United States, frankly. But uh, you know, good to it's good for an individual not to see a ceiling to what they are trying to accomplish. I think that's a very good thing. I think it's a very bad thing to delude people into thinking that they have opportunities that they don't, right? And then here's the fallout from that, because people begin to truly believe it, and then you as a political party, or let's call it a social movement, you're now faced with either saying, hey, you know what, we were wrong, or we made it up. It's one of those two. Or you have to tell them that you actually can do this. You can. They're the people saying you can are lying to you, right? Like, that is the place that the modern left has found them in. They have to continue to gaslight every one of their fucking members. Every one of their members has to be constantly gaslit with nonsense. It's just not. It's like, it's verifiably untrue. So I think that led, not even in a political sense, I think that even more than the COVID stuff, more than the heightened political tensions we've seen since George W. Bush got elected, I think that specifically, being gaslit all this time, has broken the minds of a lot of people, right? The ability to believe the last 70 years of climate alarmism, and not one thing they've predicted has happened, right? Not one fucking thing has happened. And then to believe that men can get pregnant, all this ridiculous shit, is a function, in my opinion, of them fucking up, getting caught lying, and then doubling down on the lie. And now the
Yeah, the
entire
thing
group
with
is
it.
gaslit.
Yeah, so the thing you made two good points there. The society, like, everyone has a ceiling. Like, the 110% is bullshit. The most you have to give is what you have to give. And I think it's important for society to see people like Lance Armstrong and Tiger Woods, and some of these people that achieve unbelievable, amazing feats of athleticism, and it shows society what's possible. Like, anyone that's willing, like Lance Armstrong, anyone that's willing to do what he did to win as much as he did, like, that's inspiring to me. It's like, this guy's willing to, like, die. Like, he's willing to alter his genetic makeup
Mm.
to accomplish his goals. And that shows people what's possible. Same with Tiger Woods. That guy was so injured, his shin splints traveled up his shins and were into his knees.
Mm. And
Dude, like,
by the way, shin splints are micro fractures in your bone. That's what it is,
yeah,
right?
they,
It
they
fucking sucks.
they're the worst. And his traveled all the way up into his knees because he wouldn't take time off to heal. And I think that people, like, they get programmed and gaslit into, like, you can achieve anything, you can do anything and be anything you want to be. No, that's not true, man. That no matter what I did, there's no way I was ever going to make it into the NFL. Like, it's just not ever, ever, ever going to happen. Um, but it doesn't mean that you can't try to achieve things. You just have to be, a realist when it comes to what you want to achieve and what's possible. The other thing you talked about was the whole climate change thing. And I don't understand how that's even a conversation, because
Mm.
right now, um, CO2 levels are 0.04. At 0.02, plants start to die.
Yeah.
So, like, you want to lower atmospheric CO2 levels a hundredth, 1/100th of a point, and that solves the what?
Yeah.
Because if you go 200s, plants start dying off.
Yeah.
It's
By the way, pretty much every dystopian novel or film ever written with regard to us playing God or tinkering with things, it doesn't end well. It's because we intellectually we know what homeostasis is, right? For a fucking
right.
planet, we know it's not to be fucked with, right? Like, there's just
Yeah.
not the if when CO2 levels rise, there's more food in the air for plants. More plants will grow. They will eat the CO2, so on and so forth. Now there are cycles. We spin around the sun, right? We spin around the sun. We get closer and farther away from it over time, and there are macro effects from that certainly. But the idea, God, it's just so exhausting. This idea that we're making the planet hotter. You know that for every state, in the union, none of them have had their hottest day on record. Except I think maybe 2 states or something like that have had their hottest day on record in the last 100 years.
Yeah, it's asinine. I personally believe that all that silly shit, climate change and men and women's sports, I think that's just a sleight of hand. That's like, hey, look at this, and then meanwhile the border's wide open and they let 10 million illegals in. I personally, I've not met a single person that thinks that men and women's sports is a good thing. I don't know anyone that's ever said that. I don't know that I've ever heard a person say that. I don't know anyone's ever verbally made that statement
Mm,
on video or anything. I think it's one of those things that's like make a distraction so outrageous that they don't focus on what's really going on,
yeah,
which drives me crazy because the House is controlled by the GOP currently, and they've done nothing about any of these things. They just sit there and they continue to fund the government. Like, shut it down,
yeah.
shut it completely down. It's crazy. These people are in whack jobs.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think their brains are broken. Back to we're experiencing it in real time more frequently now than we ever have before. Maybe it's because of social media. Maybe it's because the news cycle is so rapid. Like 26 days ago, we had a guy with dementia drop out of a race, had dropped out of a race, and then we had a guy who's running for president almost get assassinated, right? By the biggest security lapse, if you believe that's what it was, in the history of this country, right? And
Hands down.
nobody's even talking about that shit anymore. Like
No,
that,
that's in the distant past, man.
yeah, that's in the past, right? And but the problem is, think of these as modules, right? Modules in time. Like think of them as like pages in a book. All the information, or maybe even a chapter in a book, right? All the information that that chapter said, right, wrote about, articulated, investigated, whatever, and all the facts therein have now been moved away, right? It was part of our epistemology. It was part of our data set, right? The things that we know that form our worldview and let us, more importantly than form our worldview, provide a filter for us through which new information can travel and we can tell if it's real or not, right? That's really important to hold on to that stuff to digest to consume and actually digest information rather than just have it fucking stream through our brain and out the other side. And here's a good example of why it's important. As soon as that debate was over, actually 10 minutes into the debate between Trump and Biden, people were having 2 conversations. One was, we got to get Biden the fuck out of here. And 2, the second conversation, and you can go back and watch all the fucking media people talking about it on CNN and MSNBC and everywhere else. How do we get past Kamala Harris to put a real candidate in? That was the conversation being had. Now the conversation being had is, oh, she's great. She's great. She can't answer one policy question. All she can do is get mad when people interrupt her when she's fucking going on some 30-minute word salad diatribe, right? She has no idea what she's talking about.
5 months ago, they were talking about removing her from the ticket.
Yeah. All this doesn't exist in our epistemology anymore. It's moving too quickly. It's like subtitles that are on a screen that are moving too fast. Like, oh shit, I didn't see that. Where you're like, if it's on Netflix, if it's like a bunch of data about something, you can pause it and be like, all right, cool. That, all right, good, press play, right? But you can't do that in fucking life anymore. And things are just passing us by, and they're taking the opportunity to completely gaslight the shit out of us. I mean, it is wildly inappropriate the way that people will. The Biden administration is doing this right now. They've been caught over the last week or so paying influencers, even OnlyFans people, to broadcast bullshit. They're currently running and have been since 2019 the most expansive digital propaganda machine in the history of human politics ever. Right? I'm actually doing a story about it today on fake news. So if you're watching this, you
It's
probably would have
they
seen it
yeah, I
by
think
then.
they have I think it's 750 million is the budget for that project.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
I don't know who you're I'll put you on the phone with Steven. He can give you some insight into it. Like, I mean, that's one of the things at Vote for America
yeah.
that we keep tabs on because it's a talking point for us when we talk to donors is how much the DNC is spending on their social media influencer
Hmm.
campaigns. To just completely alarming.
It's a
It's
couple.
alarming.
There's
But
a couple of key parts of it. The first one is this digital. They set up something very similar to what Cambridge Analytica did in 2016. That is to say, they have a full team of digital media specialists who are building either AI or some other engines to detect what they call misinformation, right? And misinformation is any fact that's inconvenient to them. Like you and I have been talking about Biden having vascular dementia since 2019, middle of 2019, not even during the campaign season.
we
Me,
diagnosed him like we were medical professionals.
yeah, you and I talked about it and consulted your brother, who is a medical professional, and he was like, "Yeah, he's got vascular dementia, right? It's
Yeah,
very obvious, not
absolutely.
Parkinson's, it's vascular dementia, and he's got it. It's worse right now, right? So, uh, you know, we didn't have any special insight. I mean, we could call your brother and talk to him about it. He's a doctor, but it's just fucking. I've dealt with dementia before. I know what it fucking looks like, and so does
Right.
every fucking body else. Everybody that lied for years about this motherfucker knew exactly what it was.
And
And
they just brush past that. It's like Kamala, like you were saying he was sharp as a tack behind
yeah,
closed. Like, what are you guys doing?
yeah, yeah. Not
Like, no
just
one
not
holds
just the
anybody
people in the
accountable.
campaign though. Like everybody in the media propagated this bullshit, and they're doing it now for Tim Walz. They're trying to push him through. Now behind the scenes, from what my friends have told me who work in media, and I don't mean like Fox News and shit. I mean media, right?
Right.
Um, the Democratic Party is panicking right now. They are worried they're going to have to dump Waltz because this shit won't fucking peel off of him because he said some dumb shit. And it's not just the individual dumb shit he's done or said. Like, he absolutely abandoned his unit. There's no question in my mind about that. Knowing how
Yeah.
deployments work, like he got a deployment order. The Warno came before he was even fucking dropping a retirement packet, and command would have known about a deployment even before the warning order comes down because they talk to the fucking higher command. That's nonsense, and you can tell because in March of 2005, his congressional campaign put out a statement about it. They're like, oh yeah, we know that it's coming. I'm going to continue running for Congress whether I'm here or in Iraq. That's what he said. Like literally, that's what he said. So
Yeah.
you can't play
Jericho
that game
said,
that you didn't know.
yeah, Jericho said something to me yesterday. He's like, yeah, he said the guy actually kind of went a little AWOL on his
Yeah,
guy.
yeah, a little bit. I mean, that's what the sergeant major Tom Behrens, who replaced him, that's what he says, right? I have no reason to disbelieve him based on the totality of the evidence, because the other part of this is that once he made it to Congress and started going out on the political stump, he immediately began misrepresenting his service. He's out at a fucking anti-Bush thing saying OEF veterans against Bush. Like, well, you're not an OEF veteran. I'm sorry, but deploying to Italy doesn't count, brother. It doesn't
Yeah.
count. Like, you don't get to
No.
go on vacation to Vicenza, Italy, and then say you fucking fought in the war on terror, you fucking bitch. Are you kidding me? And then later on, more recently, actually, I think it was in 2020 or 2022. It was in 2022. He does this campaign speech. And look, it's not 1960. Everybody's got a fucking camera phone. What are you doing?
Right.
He gives this campaign speech to a room of people where it's like, oh, yeah, we got to fucking do gun control because I carried weapons of war in war. Like, well, you were never in war, right? So you didn't, motherfucker. So a guy that treats his own honor that loosely doesn't deserve the benefit of the doubt. We know
Well,
exactly who this guy is.
well, it's also let's assume that he did go to Afghanistan for the sake of this point I'm about to make. Let's pretend he did go to Afghanistan. He didn't carry a fucking AR in Afghanistan. He carried an M4. He would have carried an M4.
Yeah,
It's a totally different gun. That's why it has a different name.
yeah.
It's the thing that's super interesting to me about him is the 30 trips to China and getting married on the anniversary of Tiananmen Square.
It's a little
And
odd.
yeah,
Didn't Bernie Sanders do the same thing? Not at Tiananmen. It was well before that, but Bernie spent a lot of time in China as well.
Yeah, 30 trips. And then I saw Comer's now investigating. Did he have authorization and clearance to go to China as a sitting member of Congress,
Mm.
uh, et cetera, et cetera? Like, there's just a bunch of really weird stuff about that guy. And I think that there's a couple things around the corner that they just don't know about yet that's going to come out and
Yeah.
bite him in the ass.
I,
Where,
I, I agree. I think there's more coming down the pipe on him, to be honest. I mean, when there's smoke, like when there's this much smoke, you know something's going on. And
well, look at Vance. I mean, the smoke on Vance, and let's be honest, like there's no one better at doing oppo research on someone because they'll make shit up like the
mm,
Democratic Party. And if the worst thing they could come up with on Vance was like a statement he made in 2019 about saying like the nuclear family is important and we should focus on that, like that's the worst thing they got on the guy. And
yeah.
then they, say that he wears, mascara, which he does kind of look a little bit like he might add a little color in there, for effect.
Well,
But
we make fun of who is it? Who is that quarterback? Derek Carr. Remember him from the Raiders
President's
for a
Day,
while?
yeah.
He's got
Yeah.
super thick eyelashes. So I've been making fun of him for years for looking like he wears eyeshadow or whatever the fuck or mascara, but he obviously doesn't.
But I don't know that they can replace him. The only thing they could do would be replace him with Mark Kelly, who's he's an asshole. And then you've got the whole border thing. Shapiro backed out because everyone's viewing Kamala as just that's a career ender.
Yeah, that's
So
I honestly think that Mark Kelly said no as well. I think Tim Walz is choice number three. There's no way you go. There's no way even choice number two is the other most progressive person available, right? Like Kamala Harris is the most progressive senator we've ever had, and in the new sense of the word, right?
right.
Not like bull moose progressive, but like
Yeah, yeah.
leftist progressive.
Modern progressive, yeah.
Yeah, by far. And then Tim Walz is the by far the most progressive governor in the country, by far. Like the most radical on abortion stuff, the most radical on gender reassignment for children and cutting kids' dicks off and shit. He wants to give millions and millions of dollars to illegals. He wants to give them IDs. He offered to fucking give them ladders to climb over the Trump wall. All this shit, right? He's the by far the most progressive governor out. There's no way he was choice number two.
He doesn't own a stock. He doesn't own a bond. He doesn't have mutual funds. He literally has
He's got
everything.
three. He's got three government pensions. That's what he has.
Well, and that's another thing. If you look, that I think is super bizarre about those two is neither one of them's had a job in the private sector.
Mm-hmm.
They've been working for the government their entire careers, and that should be alarming to people. That bothers the shit out of me. But Shapiro apparently Sunday, I think it was like, "Hey, I'm not doing this," because he has aspirations of running for president himself one day.
Mm.
Now, this is also something to keep in mind. If Kamala wins, they no Democrats will be able to run for president till 2032.
Yeah.
That takes
Yeah.
out Gavin Newsom. That takes out Gretchen Whitmer. That takes
Shapiro.
out Shapiro. That takes out the entire list for 8 years.
Yeah.
So, and that's why you don't see those two. You haven't heard shit from Gavin Newsom in a minute. You haven't heard anything from Whitmer.
Yeah.
So, what's happening right now is there's just this massive purge valve of energy that's coming off because they were so despondent because they thought of like they'd given up with Biden. And then all of a sudden Biden drops out and there's this massive release and this massive relief and there's just so much positive energy. What'll happen is they'll get into their convention, there'll be a bump there, it'll last for a couple weeks and then come around Labor Day. She can't run from the media forever. She's going to have to start answering questions at some point. And then I think that's when the race for presidency basically starts. Is it Memorial Day or Labor Day? I get them confused always.
Labor Day.
Labor Day. So yeah.
Yeah, the conventions aren't until after Memorial Day.
Yeah. So Memorial Day is in May and Labor Day is in September. So the campaigns, everything will kick into high gear and we'll get a much more accurate picture. But Trump is still leading in the national polls. So when you see people posting these polls, you have to look at what the poll is. Like I did some digging on a couple polls and it's like she's up by 2 points. It's like, yeah, it's a D+6 poll.
Mm.
So I think the Trump campaign needs to get their shit together. But I'm not super worried.
Yeah, I'm not either. I don't think. I mean, I'm also not worried because America knows who these two people are. They know who Harris and Walz are. And if they vote for him, then America's going to get exactly what it deserves. And Texas will become its own country, I would imagine, right? It's like that's just kind of how it is. So I'm fine with that. I don't. I've never been romantic about the idea of 50 states, right? It's a nice round number. The stars look good on the flag and shit, but
Right.
you know what I mean? America's more than a fucking piece of fabric. It's more than geography. It's the idea that individual liberty and personal entrepreneurship are the ultimate inoculation to tyrannical bullshit, right? And if
Right.
we believe that, then we're America no matter where we go. I'm not terribly concerned about that. But yeah, I'm also I find it very difficult to believe that people take her seriously because she can't answer one question. Now I think Trump's making a mistake with the debate back and forth. I think he should say, look, let's do one on Fox and we'll do one on ABC still, whatever. Now, I understand that, like, the left narrative on this is that he's scared. He's definitely, I mean, that's the dumbest shit of all time. The other narrative is that ABC is neutral territory. It's like, you mean the organization that he has an active lawsuit against that just moved forward in federal court and named the guy who would almost certainly be one of the moderators,
They've
Stephanopoulos? Like,
announced that
that's, come on, man.
Stephanopoulos would be the moderator, and
Yeah, of
Trump was
course.
going
He'd
to
at
let
least be one of them, right? It's like no way. That's not that in no sense of the word is that neutral territory. They're literally getting sued for defamation, and he's going to win that case too.
Yeah. If you look at the Biden Trump debate, that was planned. That was orchestrated.
Oh yeah, by Obama to get him out of there. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. That's the earliest debate we've ever had. And so what they did was they basically goaded and bullied Trump into accepting it. Joe Biden has never in his life looked as bad as he did that night on stage, physically. Like, I don't give a shit what, why, who, how, when, where, what. I don't care. That dude, he was white. He had no base, like no makeup on. He had no tanning bed. He had no orange paint, whatever you want to call it, self-tanning lotion. That dude, he's never looked that bad before, and he's never looked that bad since. So that was done on purpose. And then now what they're trying to do is drag this thing out until mail-in ballots and early voting starts. That's the entire plan, is because they want just delay, stall, and try to get as many ballots in the ballot boxes, early voting, mail-in ballots, and whatnot, before everyone realizes that Kamala is a complete moron. I mean, listen, she was the lowest since they've started polling VPs. She's polled the lowest of any VP in modern history. And then 3 weeks ago, she was polling at 23%. Now you're going to tell me that she's like the darling and savior of the Republic? She's the next coming of Barack Obama? Like, that woman does. Could you imagine her sitting down in a room with Putin or Xi Jinping?
Yeah. I mean, maybe they're not used to even having to listen to what women say. So maybe that would be off-putting to them enough that she might actually be able to get something done. As she cackles, but she doesn't know anything, right? I mean, she just doesn't know anything at all. I've never seen a dumber person rise
She's not a serious,
so
she's
high.
not a serious candidate.
No, not at
She's
all.
not a serious
So
candidate.
my thought, and I've been saying this for 6 to 8 months now. It's hard. I can't remember exactly how long, but what I've been saying is there's no way Biden can run, right? In my mind, there were 3 scenarios. One, Biden runs, it's a punt. They use him to get him and Kamala out forever. 2, they get rid of Biden, let Kamala take the lead, and that's a punt as well. Like let's end her career, get her the fuck out of here, so we can start being serious people again. And then 3 was try to replace him early with a real candidate, right? That would have had to have happened like in March, and it didn't. So I don't know if they tried and failed, or if they just like, you know what, fuck it. Because to your point, if she were to win, they get boxed out of the White House for some amount of time, right? Her presidency for sure, and definitely the 4 years after, because it would be a disaster.
Yeah, well, so if what I mean by that is, let's say she wins, so she's there for 4 years.
Yeah,
they can't run against the Democrats can't run against an incumbent.
Yeah,
she would be the nominee for the next election.
100%,
They're not.
Yeah,
Gavin Newsom and Whitmer and those people.
So to point two of the punt, which is putting her up front. The way I articulated this a couple months ago is if they choose a serious vice presidential candidate for her, then maybe they're deluded enough to think that she can win. If it's a shit show and they end up choosing some fucking slapdick with a bunch of baggage, that means they're punting. And when I say they, I mean Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi. I think that's who's in control of the DNC. I think there's an alt wing of the Clintons who have waning power now. I do kind of think that I think that the push to get Biden removed was probably one or the other. I don't know if it was both. I'm not. I don't know about that. But what I do know is that, and I heard this from somebody who was in the room, like literally in the room, a staffer for a senior cabinet member. Kamala Harris, under the advisement of one of those two people, I don't know if it was Obama or Clinton, but she
Obama.
probably Obama tried to invoke the 25th Amendment against Biden so she could be president and then run as an incumbent. This happened. I reported this like 5 days, I think, 7 days maybe before he dropped out of the race. And that was the threat that finally got him out because they didn't like his family was holding on to the office for dear life, and
Oh, yeah,
they didn't want
absolutely.
him to get embarrassed, so they fucking agreed. You know what? He'll drop out of the race, but he's not going to leave the presidency. Um,
Which, if they want to win, if they want to win, like really, I kind of think there's a little bit of punt in there. Like, so why would they not want Kamala to be the first female president running as an incumbent, pulling up to campaign events in Air Force One? Like
mm,
I don't understand what's the downside there because like someone told me they're like, yeah, they allowed for the Bidens to stay on till the end of their term. And it's like, what do you mean they allowed him to? Like, or Biden negotiated that? Like, no, Biden doesn't have any control.
yeah,
Like, they had the votes to invoke the 25th. I don't know why they didn't do it because Kamala, the first, like, the honeymoon phase on that lasts longer.
yeah.
She's the first female president, et cetera, et cetera. There's just a lot of monkey business going on. The Obamas control the media, Clintons control money. That's the difference between the two. And those two families despise each other, literally hate. I think the Clintons are big Gavin Newsom people,
Hmm.
and I don't know who the Obamas next in line is. I don't know who it is, but I know the Clintons do like Gavin Newsom quite a bit.
Yeah, we'll see. Uh, I know that they didn't have the votes for the 25th.
They were short too.
Yeah, two people were hard nosed. Buttigieg said he would vote with the majority. One other person said they would vote for the majority. Janet Yellen said no, or no, she said she would vote with the majority as well. Two people said absolutely not, and I don't know why. Who knows, right? Why people do that, but at any rate, yeah. I mean, it's been a very bizarre turn of circumstances. It's hard to tell. Um, it's hard to tell like they've done a relatively good job for people that follow politics. It's obvious that there's shit going on behind the scenes, but they've done a pretty good job of keeping it out of the media. Like, yeah, there was a lot of back and forth about getting Biden the fuck out of there. A lot of people chirping on fucking social media and in the actual media. But as far as the panic behind the scenes and as far as like the infighting between the Clinton camp and the Obama camp, you don't hear any of that in the media, really.
No, no, the media does whatever the DNC wants. That's the arm of the DNC. I mean, it's depressing, and that's one of the things that we're seeing with Vote for America. One of my projects I'm working on,
Mm-hmm.
voteforamerica.org. Um, the amount of traffic to the website the night that the assassination attempt on Trump was like 500x what it normally was. Like people went completely insane. And like to your point earlier, no one's talking about that anymore. And that's by design. Like the media jumped all over it when it happened. They were talking about it. And then all of a sudden, they pulled the plug on that and they started talking about Kamala. And so now that's the story. So far to date, the strings they're pulling behind the scenes on Kamala's candidacy have been flawless,
Mm-hmm.
except for Tim Walz. That was the first big mistake they made. But I could see them pulling Walz for booty juice.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, honestly, my take was if they really wanted to win, it would be Shapiro or Kelly. Shapiro's problematic in Michigan, right? Which they need, they need it, but not as much as they need Pennsylvania. So that would have made sense.
Right.
Mark Kelly is, in my opinion, Mark Kelly is pretty bulletproof because the one big thing about him that doesn't really play all that well is how hyper anti-gun he is. And when I say it doesn't play that well, I don't know how much independents actually care about it, but I know that rhetoric really mobilizes the Republican base, right? Somebody that's
Right.
talking all that shit. But he's kind of insulated from that because his wife literally got shot in the face. You know what I mean? So you'd be like, I mean, this is deeply personal for me. Now I find that to be a character flaw that somebody could be so deeply affected by a personal tragedy that they abandon their fucking loyalty to the Constitution, especially a military guy. That's not very
Yep.
impressive to me, but
No.
it does play well, politically, optics wise, and it makes it very difficult to go after him on that subject. So I think he would have been a good choice. They got a big problem with Jews right now. I think they've already lost this election just because of the Jew thing. And you see, like,
Well,
Kamala fucked up big time last night in Michigan at her first campaign event in Michigan. Pro-Palestine people come into the fucking thing and just start fucking going crazy. And she does what she does. Excuse me, I'm speaking. That whole fucking thing. It's not endearing, right? Yeah,
well, she
people,
also said she
all
was
the
open.
childless white women around here cheered, right? But to ordinary people, that's not very endearing, especially people that care about that issue.
Well, also she talked about she wanted to explore an arms embargo to Israel.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
this is the first time in I don't know how long a Republican is leading amongst the Jews in New York. Trump is up a point on with the Jewish vote in New
Yeah.
York for the
80,
first time ever.
80% of American Jews are registered Democrats. 80%. Now,
Oh, for sure.
that's a fact. It's like I'm not speculating there. It's 80%, or it's
Yeah,
82 or 83%, something like that. But
yeah.
if the Jewish population in the cities in New York turn against her, I mean, I don't think they're in any real danger of losing New York, but that would be extremely funny if she lost New York.
I would laugh. I would laugh hysterically. Which I don't understand how the Jewish population is so highly democratic. I don't understand that. Like in the past few elections, that blows my mind. I don't understand.
I don't understand it either, frankly, because none of the Jews I know vote for fucking like all the Jews. I dozens and dozens of them that I work with and that work for me either as contractors or like my CPAs and shit like that. Not one of them has would ever. They may have voted for Clinton back in the day because the economy was all right, right? But that's
Right.
the modern version of the Democratic Party. None of them support that shit. I just don't know who are these fucking. It's all. I guess it's academics. It's all the academic
Uh,
people.
well, I think that Jewish people Jewish people in America are different than Israelis. Like it's a totally different
Yeah.
individual. But the Jews in America, I think they believe that they have a monopoly on suffering. Like, and I just think it's part of their DNA that they feel obligated to vote Democratic. Um, because I think that they buy in whole cloth that the Democratic Party is the party of the people, which, made sense 20, 30, 40 years ago, but it damn sure doesn't make sense now. The Democratic Party now is all for big government. That's all they want.
Hmm.
More government, more regulation, more control. And Melissa and I were in London in Brussels, May 29th through June the 6th. And the first thing I noticed, I was like, this place isn't British anymore. It's Arabs and Indians. That's all you see is you don't really see very many British people.
Mm.
Um, and the longer we were there, the more I realized I was like, hey man, so these people have working class and then they have the wealth class. Like there's no middle class in London, in England. It doesn't exist. And I think ultimately what the Democratic Party wants is to eradicate the middle class in America, just to eviscerate it, because then you have your working class relies on the government for aid. And that way, when someone relies on you, it's easy to control them. You just turn the faucet off if they're not doing what you want them to. So I think ultimately that doesn't make sense to me. Like 60% of my neighborhood is Orthodox Jew, like 60% of them. And I don't understand how. I'm going to start asking them, hey, why are you guys voting for Democrats? I'm going to start asking them starting tonight. When I go on my walk with the dog,
Mm.
I'm going to ask. I'm going to get answers.
I'd like to know, to be honest. Like it's hard to. Here's the because I've had this conversation a bunch and I never get a straight answer. But here's what I unpack from the answer I do get. What I hear is that like they'll go down policy issues that they don't like about Kamala Harris or Biden or the Democrats more broadly. Like, yeah, I don't like all the this or all the that, but Trump's evil and we have to stop him. I'm like, okay, explain exactly how, because he was in office for 4 years and all you needed to stop him was an election, which we're going to have again at the end of his term, and he's not even eligible to run again. And by the way, the country was fucking fine. As a matter of fact, it
It was great.
thrived, right? Like his aggregate inflation over the course of 4 years was 12%. which is well under the average. The average is 3 points a year, right? Or sorry, it was
Right.
11%. So it's well under the average. It was 3 points a year. It should have been 12 at a minimum, right? Right now it's 22. Actually, it's 24 now through 3.5 years of the Biden administration. It's like, all right, cool. They'll go on these. I think people's brains are just broken, right? They've fallen for all the propaganda. They can't. It doesn't. And kudos to the Democrats for being so good at lying to people, but
Yeah, they're
they've
massive.
they've convinced people that like 350 goobers walking in between stanchions into the Capitol was somehow like an armed insurrection. Not one person was armed. Most of them were elderly, for Christ's sake, and everyone was a retard. So, like,
Yeah, it was an unarmed insurrection against armed
against the building.
against, yeah, I
Like
don't.
the Capitol building doesn't hold some special power. This isn't capture the goddamn flag. Like just because you're sitting in Nancy Pelosi's office doesn't mean you get her job. We're not fucking Vikings, dude. What the hell? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But people believe that shit and they think it'll happen again. Like Biden was on CBS 2 days ago talking about how,
Yesterday.
or was it yesterday? Yeah, it was yesterday. Okay. He was talking about how if Trump loses again, he won't accept a peaceful transfer of power. What do you mean transfer of power? You guys are already in power. He doesn't what is he going to do? Fucking sneak into the White House at night? Like, I ain't leaving.
Yeah, this
Like,
is
what the
me.
fuck are you talking about?
Squatters' rights. What's interesting about the January 6th stuff is like uh, the Fisher case, the Supreme Court
Mm,
ruled on earlier, which was the 1512C2 statute, which was the felony that they attached to everyone, which got them the enhancements on the
yeah.
chargings. A couple of those have been thrown out now, which sets precedent. So we should start seeing a ton of that stuff start trickling through, which is a good thing. And I think that whole people are so sick of hearing about that. The insurrection, it's like I haven't heard anyone say anything about insurrection in a while, and I'm pretty pleased about that because I
No
think it's
serious people, yeah.
no, it was a riot at worst. Worst case scenario, it was a riot.
Mm,
So anyway, one last thing I wanted to talk about the smokeless vet stuff that we're a project I'm working on.
yeah.
One of the things that for those listening, I have a project I'm working on, which is our goal is to get 500,000 veterans to quit smoking by 2030. And what we've learned is that the things that the VA is giving them, the tools that the VA is giving them, are not the right tools. For example, nicotine lozenges don't do anything to help you quit smoking. Nicotine patches don't do anything to help you quit smoking. In fact, I was talking to Chelsea at Hunter 7 the other day, and she was explaining to me that nicotine patches are actually helpful in fighting COVID
Hmm.
and have zero impact on helping people quit smoking. And
And,
then
and in what way would they help with COVID?
it's a vasodilator,
Okay.
so it
Makes sense,
opens
yeah.
up. Yeah, and then nicotine gum does not help at all. And the only thing that truly helps people quit smoking is transitioning onto less harmful forms of nicotine, because tobacco is the thing that causes problems. Nicotine is not
Mm,
something that's bad for you.
yeah.
Uh, so I just wanted to throw that little tagline out there.
Yeah, I mean, nicotine is a nootropic. It has all sorts of positive benefits for your body. Um,
Yeah,
it's like,
fantastic.
which is interesting because the FDA requires that anybody that's advertising nicotine or advertising any nicotine products say that nicotine is an addictive substance. It's like, okay, so is air and water. Is it harmful? What the fuck are you talking about, man? Like it's
Yeah,
that's one of the most silly. Like the FDA is a fucking joke, anyways. But that's one of the most silly ones, frankly. Is that nicotine? This product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. That's the literal phrase that you have to use anytime you do one of those ads. It's like, okay,
my
one
favorite. Go ahead.
one one who doesn't fucking know that, I guess, but fair enough. Two, who fucking cares? What difference does it make? MSG is addictive. If I fucking do an ad for potato chips, I don't have to say that shit.
The I like the posters at the VA that if you're feeling stressed, text stress to this number and someone
Mm.
will get on the phone with you and talk you out of smoking a cigarette. Do you think that's ever worked, Dan?
No, and I hope it doesn't. To be honest, that's dumb as shit.
How
for
much money do
fuck's
you think
sake.
they spent on that campaign?
I don't know. I mean, we spent $9 billion installing like 5 electrical charging stations in a state. So what do you think, dude?
No, it was six nationwide. We got six out of them.
Weren't they all in just in one state though? I thought they were all in
No, no,
just
no.
one
It's
state.
nationwide. We did six charging stations.
Yeah,
I
but
think it's six.
I know it was a nationwide project, but I think well, maybe I'm wrong about that. I felt like they were all in just they only got to one state and only did like 6 of them or some shit. And they were like, "Yeah, we ran out of money. It was $9 billion, man."
I like how the U.S. Army spent $38 million with the Rock for a recruiting advertisement.
Yeah.
Literally did not bring a single person into a recruiting
I
station.
guess they didn't smell what the Rock was cooking. Yeah, it's we're the dumbest motherfuckers of all time, and we accidentally gave $250 million to the Taliban. And by the way, I don't know if you've seen this on Sean Ryan's show; he's been reporting on it, but we're giving them somewhere between 40 and $90 million a week to the Taliban. So while all of your families are struggling, while we're at 40-year high inflation, right? And it's on pace again for 4.5 to 5% this year. Don't let them lie to you and tell you it's not. Even in the new way that they calculate it, it's still higher than it's ever been. And it's his aggregate inflation for a 4-year term is going to be like 26 to 28%. I mean, it's fucking crazy. But while you're struggling to buy groceries because they're 2.5 times more expensive now, and while we're refusing to spend any money at our own border to stop a goddamn invasion from happening, how would I fix that? Money to terrorists. Fuck yeah, dude. Let's do it. Let's give money to goddamn terrorists and just see what
So
happens. Maybe it'll work. You don't know that it won't work.
what's
Butterfly effect,
when
motherfucker.
you do when you lay the math out, when you stretch it out, dude, that's a $250 million a month.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, look, it's
That's
expensive. Terrorism's expensive, dude.
dude, that's three
Making sure women aren't reading books and stuff that costs money, Baker.
that's $3 billion a year to the Taliban.
Yeah, which is about the same amount that we give to Israel, by the way.
And at least they provide us intelligence.
Yeah, I mean, it's wrong most of the time, and also they fucking spy on us and shit, but they're at least doing something.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. What is your take on the Middle East right now? Like the conflict because here's my take,
Mm-hmm.
and you know way more about this than I do. It appears that Iran has completely backed down and are scared to fuck with Israel because now they know that Israel can kill them wherever they are, whenever they want to. And then they're scared that they'll hit their nuclear site, their production facility, which they can and they will. And Hezbollah is basically growing very impatient and mad at Iran because Iran hasn't done anything.
Yeah, that part is true. So let's take a quick 30,000 foot view because I think it's important because
Mhm.
one of the most important things that's happened in the Middle East in recent history was under Trump, and it's the Abraham Accords, right? And it's
Yep.
where he targeted all the richest countries that weren't already allies, all the richest countries in the Middle East, and said, "Hey, we're gonna fucking do economic deals and we're gonna do peace deals with fucking Israel and with the West." Pretty much all of them came to the table and agreed to it. Bahrain, Qatar, fucking even Saudi Arabia, right? Here's what I think from a 30,000 foot view. To your point about Iran, Khomeini wants war. Like that, the religious sect of the leadership in that country want war. Pezeshkian, the new president in Iran, doesn't. He wants to modernize Iran. He wants to go back to 1960s Iran, right?
Right.
That's what my understanding. MBS, no matter what you think about that whole Khashoggi thing, and he gets a lot of heat internationally for whatever the fuck, but MBS is trying everything he can right now to modernize Saudi Arabia. All the live deals, all the sports deals, buying fucking Mbappe or whatever the fuck, like all this stuff, and Cristiano Ronaldo, all of it is geared towards, hey, if people are making money and happy and having a good time and shit like that, they'll stop worrying about all this other bullshit. Now, he's battling a lot of internal forces with the Wahhabist nonsense in Saudi Arabia, but the two most powerful countries in the Middle East that are not Israel, right, are actively trying to modernize themselves, from the inside out, right? And this is in addition to Qatar, Bahrain, and UAE and Jordan, this is a unique opportunity in human history to let them fucking join modernity and knock it off with all this bullshit, right? Just knock like when somebody has a successful economy and shit like that, they're not going to be engaging in terrorism. It's not how it works, right? That stuff always comes from poverty. It always comes from poverty. Poverty and then let's call it international disenfranchisement. It's always from that, right? So I think we're in a unique position right now behind the scenes to really make something happen with all these guys because except for Erdogan and Turkey, pretty much every Middle Eastern country that matters, right? Syria doesn't matter, Lebanon doesn't matter. Pretty much every country that matters is like, all right, they're just all looking around like, all right, can we stop fighting for a fucking while or what, right? And I think I think this is a really important time in American history, and I think it's even more important to vote right now to make sure that Trump gets in because he will finish the Abraham Accords in 4 years. It'll take him probably a year and a half, 2 years maybe to finish that. And the world will be completely different then. All of the attempts by China and Russia to infiltrate the Middle East, like they'll have Africa, they already do. There's nothing we can do about that. But
Right.
their attempts to coalition build in the Middle East will be over. It'll just be Syria, maybe Lebanon at that point, maybe Yemen, right? But those countries they don't matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're dog shit.
They don't matter. They don't make anything. They don't make any money. And Saudi Arabia and Iran will police them, right?
Yeah.
Iran will police Yemen. Saudi Arabia will police the rest. So we have the opportunity now to get this done. And I'm not a huge Trump guy. I like a lot of the stuff he did. He was a good president, in my opinion. Fucked a lot of stuff up too, but everybody does. But he's the only guy that's ever even gotten close to this with Israel and the Middle Eastern countries and the United States. The only one that's ever gotten close. And I think it's really important to give him a couple years to figure this shit out, honestly. Because it doesn't just affect obviously the immigration stuff going on here, all the domestic stuff that you're thinking in your head right now. I agree with everything you're thinking. But the main foreign policy issue we have is settling that so that China and Russia can't grow stronger. Russia, not terribly concerned about them, but so China specifically can't grow stronger with new coalitions in the Middle East.
I agree with everything you said. You nailed it.
Well, tell me more about Vote for America before we get out of here.
All right. So, Vote for America is a project that I got kind of recruited into. And basically, what we're doing is we're trying to get people to register to vote. And it's not registering to vote and voting isn't enough. You need to grab one person. First of all, you need to register to vote, make sure you're registered, and then find one person and take one person with you. So if you look at some of the numbers, licensed hunters and gun owners in swing states, for example, let's see here. Michigan, swing state, 370,000 licensed hunters over the age of 18 and gun owners did not vote in the last election. Minnesota, 261,000 did not vote in the last election. Pennsylvania, 515,000. Wisconsin, 338,000. Ohio isn't a swing state, but I fucking hate Ohio State. And I like to talk shit about that state any chance I get. But Ohio had 620,000 licensed hunters and gun owners that did not vote in the last election. And what you need to do is go to the vote, the number 4, America.org. And if you're not registered to vote, register. If you are registered to vote, go vote, the number 4, America.org, and confirm that you are registered. And then every person that's listening to this podcast has interacted with 4 to 5 people already today that didn't vote in the last election. And, a lot of people say, oh, it's rigged. They're going to put whoever they want in there, all that stuff. Okay, that's fine. But that is what a lazy piece of shit would say. Just say, I'm too fucking fat and lazy to go vote. Or you could say, I'm too stupid and I don't know how to vote. I'll accept that one. But there's no reason that people can't vote, and there's no reason that people can't go out and recruit one person to vote. Because, most people just want to be left alone. I just want to be left alone. I want to live my life, do what I do, and not have to worry about the government harassing me or regulating me to death. And a lot of that stuff is at risk And so the progressive left, those crazy people, they can protest and riot and raise hell and complain and cry and post on social media all day, every day. All we have to do is show up once every 4 years and beat the living shit out of them at the polls on election day, and then we can go back to being left alone and
Yeah.
minding our own.
Yeah, what
It's
do we
not too.
say? Sweat and training prevents blood in combat, right? That's a phrase that we like to use a lot. And think of voting every couple of years as going out to the perimeter of your property and looking at your fence and fixing any holes in it, right? It's just maintenance. Like you don't get, and you also don't deserve to be left alone if you don't do the maintenance. Frankly, in my opinion. So yeah, I agree with the fat lazy fuck. It's like a dude with no personality just calling women lesbians because they don't want to fuck them. Like, no, you're a loser, dude.
Yeah,
Like,
you're an incel.
honestly,
You
yeah,
you hate them because they won't bang you. So
yeah,
anyway,
yeah. Anyways, yeah. Thanks for coming today. Appreciate the time. Tell everybody where they can find you if they want to see some of your ramblings and such.
um, Baker B Levitt on Twitter or Black Baker on Instagram, and then also Dan, I was introduced yesterday to Sheriff Chad Bianco, the guy out in Riverside, California.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Do you want him on the show?
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna do a text intro here shortly.
All right. Cool.
All right,
Thanks for
guys.
coming. Thanks for coming, man.
Thanks for
Appreciate the
having me
time.
on, man.
Yeah.
Have a good
Anytime.
evening.
Thank you all for listening to It's Been City.